Good evening, everyone. I welcome you to the very first Pride Perspectives webinar at Trinity-Pawling of the 2023-24 school year. My name is Amy Foster. I work in the Learning Commons area as well as the admissions area at TP, and I've been here half my lifetime. That's all we have to say for that. I'm here tonight with Dr. Marilyn Lashlee, Head of School Bill Taylor, and Katie Berlandi, who's our Dean of Counseling. So I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves for a little bit more detail. But we're starting off with a very important topic that's near and dear to our hearts, and I'm sure that our families agree. It's the health and wellness of our boys and our community. And I think we'll hear a lot about what we're doing at TP that is really on the right path to helping our boys as well as ourselves as a community be the healthiest we can be. So without further ado, Bill, I'll ask you to start and we will continue on.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Bill Taylor. I'm head of school at Trinity-Pawling. This is my 9th year as head of school at Trinity-Pawling, but it is my 22nd year at Trinity-Pawling. Over 2 different stints. I was also the head of a co-ed day school for 14 years. So this is, I guess, you add all that together, that's 30. This is my 36th year working with teenagers, and happy to be at Trinity-Pawling and happy to be with you all this evening.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Marilyn Lashlee. I'm the director of. This is my 3rd year here. I have been a practicing pediatric nurse practitioner for over 20 years. I'm also a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, and very excited to be here to talk with you all about taking good care of our boys.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Katie Allen Berlandi, and I am the Dean of Counseling here at Trinity-Pawling School, and I also have the privilege of teaching a psychology class as an elective, a full-year elective with primarily seniors. And this is my 9th year also. I started the same year as Bill for his second stint. And I also have a son who went to 7th and 8th grade here, and he is now in 9th grade here at Trinity-Pawling.
Great, thank you. So why are we focusing on this as our first Pride Perspectives? We cover a lot of topics. Why are we starting off with this one this year?
You know, Bill, would you like to go?
Well, I think it's, I'll just say briefly, what could be more important than the health and well-being of our students? Trinity-Pawling is a very student-centered school, and so we pay close attention to the health and well-being of our students. But we're also well aware of sort of the overall culture and climate of wellness, health, mental health, and understanding that today in 2023, we're dealing with some pretty distinct challenges with all of that. And that means our boys are, and all kids are. And so I can't think of a better way to begin this conversation.
Yes, thank you, Bill. And I am just so grateful that we are beginning with this conversation about health and wellness. And it's a conversation that we have here on campus in a variety of ways every single day. But in thinking about boys in general, perhaps many of you know, if we look at boys nationally, right, there's a slippage in school achievement. There are fewer boys or men, young men at that point attending college. They are grappling with social media and who they are, what their identity is within both a masculine world and a world that's trying to break out of that masculine box and perhaps introducing elements of of vulnerability and exploration into emotions. So that again, I think is a really important reason to focus on our boys and boys in general. And Mr. Taylor assigned all of us faculty a book to read over the summer, which is called, Better Boys, Better Men. And it touched upon these points of allowing boys to be more expressive of how they think and how they feel, and so being vulnerable, and us as adults in their world tending to their emotional needs, perhaps even more in a more fine-tuned fashion. So that all leads, of course, into mental health in general, and health and wellness.
Thanks, Katie. And the CDC has some, rather concerning statistics surrounding adolescent mental health. We know that 1 in 5 between the ages of 9 and 17 have some type of mental disorder that's causing them some degree of impairment. And about only 1 out of 3 of them actually receives treatment for that. 1 in 10 adolescents have a disorder that causes them significant impairment. And of course, alarming that suicide is the second leading cause of death in young people ages 15 to 24. So these are all important to consider.
Yeah, very sobering, startling statistics. And I think that's something that we are always very attentive to, is, that our students are part of the larger culture. And with that in mind, we are also very deliberate and conscientious about the culture that we are creating and nurturing at Trinity-Pawling. I often sort of speak to the faculty that the culture of Trinity-Pawling is actually somewhat countercultural. There was a time that maybe that was sort of not a positive term, but I think that perhaps in today's culture, it's probably something to strive for, to be countercultural, when you think of how isolated people can become in the larger culture. And we push back against that isolation by being very deliberate about community and how we build community and how we talk about trust and relationship in community. We spend a lot of time speaking about and building a depth of self-awareness for our students. And that stands in contrast to the larger culture that is more focused on self-absorption. We spend a lot of time talking about and doing things that focus on the common good versus just focusing on self-interest. The boys' term for the community is brotherhood. And that has everything to do with how they want to forge a community where people care about one another. So the culture at school is one that will promote this idea of vulnerability, because vulnerability happens when students feel safe, when they feel connected, when they feel that they can take healthy risks. And this book that Katie referenced, Better Boys, Better Men, by Andrew Reiner, it's a wonderful book. I would commend it to everybody. Really talks about how important that is, because that is countercultural to the larger culture of masculinity that sees vulnerability as a weakness. So I think all of this does play into the school's focus on creating a healthy community that will stand in some degree as a bulwark against some of these statistics and realities of the challenges to larger issues of mental health. We still see them, but I think we're working to create a culture where when we see them, we can address them quickly, but where boys can also talk about their feelings and talk about how they are feeling if they don't feel well and so forth. And Katie, I think you can probably speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and I just to echo a bit of what Bill has been saying, it's the culture here, or the counterculture. I look at it as a foundation, right? Sort of a preventative mechanism against sort of against the yuck, right? Against the isolation, against the polarization and disrespect. That doesn't mean that that aberrant behavior doesn't happen, because it does. But when it does, we are able to hearken back to this foundational, this foundation of culture, and use that as a reference point and a ballast for our work with our boys.
If I could just add one thing, Bill, my experience this week, last week, I guess it was, at the lunch table. So for those, I think mostly current parents here are aware, we have family style meals, sit down meals with the boys 4 times a week. And so we really get an opportunity to talk to them, one-on-one. And I think a lot of families don't even do that anymore, have that opportunity to sit and just gauge what's going on in each other's lives on a day-to-day basis. And one boy who's a new student this year said, "I can't believe how much everybody cares about me here." So it is almost tangible. And for this boy to feel it a week into school, I think is a testament to how much of a strong community we have. That's all.
And I think because of the focus on community, when we see threats to mental health, we're able to address them pretty quickly. Every student has an advisor, and that advisor's checking in with students on a regular basis. Boarding students also have lots of interaction with their dorm parents in the dormitory. Teachers, 90% of the teachers live on campus. So we're seeing these boys all the time in a variety of different ways. And we talk, and I think, far more than I think the boys are aware of how much we talk as professionals, as educators. We have a meeting once a week with the form advisor. Every grade level has an form advisor that oversees that grade. And so we have a meeting once a week. I'm in that meeting. The associate head is in the meeting. Katie Berlandi is in the meeting. Dr. Lashlee's in the meeting. The school's chaplain is in the meeting. The director of college guidance is in the meeting. It's people who are overseeing all sorts of different parts of the school. And when we talk about students for whom we may have a concern, we've noticed something, or their advisors has noticed something. And the rule of there are a couple standing rules of that meeting, confidentiality, of course, being the primary rule, but also a rule that we have is that we don't bring a student up unless we leave with a strategy, and then we communicate those strategies back. And so when we notice if somebody's not sleeping, we notice if somebody's not eating, we notice if somebody's behavior has dipped noticeably. We notice if a boy's not connecting with other boys, or hasn't really found that adult with whom he has connected. And we come up with different strategies and so forth. And that is part of, I think, part of that front line, preventative measures. And then Dr. Lashlee, I know there are plenty of resources in the health center, and perhaps you and and Katie can speak about those.
Yeah, thank you, Bill, so much. And I again, if we look at the threats to mental health, part of my role and the role of Dr. Lashlee is to educate our faculty as to what do these threats look like, just as Mr. Taylor was touching upon, so we can recognize and address them. So again, Bill talked about some physical symptoms, right? If someone looks exhausted, right? Weight loss or gain, more sleep, less sleep, change in appearance in other ways, less attention paid to hygiene or their dress being less put together. And then we have ways to sort of identify when there might be substance use or abuse going on. And obviously less engaged in class and academics, extracurricular supports. But so if we're not educated as the adults on the ground, being able to pick up on these changes in our boys, then we're doing a disservice. So we pay a lot of attention to education here around mental health issues. And then, as Bill talked about, these protective elements at Trinity-Pawling. And I do want to just mention another very valuable, a couple of other very valuable protective measures, in addition to what Bill has spoken about. But we have health and wellness speakers come to campus, whether it's on nutrition or sleep or healthy relationships, on substances, and on boundary issues. And all of these are important educational opportunities. And we always try to then have small, great breakout groups with the boys. So it gives them an opportunity to debrief, ask questions, and for us to continue the education. And Dr. Lashlee, I'll allow you to talk about the nurses fair, but also Father Lennox, as I don't know if new parents have had a chance to meet Father Lennox, maybe in one of the opening days, but he is the chaplain here, and he is quite remarkable. And he and other adults and students give chapel talks. And those I find to be a preventative element to our lives here at Trinity-Pawling. So in the chapel, there are messages, and on Mondays, Father Lennox gives a strength for the day, and he is the head of the community service here. And to harken back to what Bill was saying about the common good, he does a real good job of letting us know that our life is bigger than ourselves. And he focuses on kindness and empathy and humor and simple joys. And even just this verbiage is so important for the boys to hear and imagine. So, Dr. Lashlee.
Before Dr. Lashlee, I'm sorry, one thing, the boys recognize this so much in that they dedicated the yearbook to Father Lennox last year. After just the 3 or 4 years that he's been with us, that's a very big honor for the boys to have done that. So sorry, Marilyn, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Thank you. So from the Health and Wellness Center, we try to do a lot of education. Monthly, we'll focus on, a topic, not anything too serious, but just something as simple as, staying hydrated. And we'll, sort of post things around campus for the month that, help the boys sort of remind them about, just how important it is to just be drinking. In November, we will partner with the pediatric nursing students at Mount St. Mary College as part of Saturday programming, and they come and do sort of a health fair for the boys where they'll be introduced to several different, topics that are, I think, relevant to adolescent boys. So just some examples would be things like talking about the dangers of distracted driving or vaping, talking about recognizing mental health issues in themselves or, in someone else, healthy eating. We talk about, pre-workout and energy drinks and, things like that. So that'll be coming up soon for this year.
And this year, we now have what is coined the Zen Den in the health center. Marilyn, maybe you can touch on that.
Yeah, so we're very happy to have created this space that we're calling the Zen Den, which is a safe space for the boys to visit if they just need some time to sort of collect themselves and regroup. It gives them like a quiet, relaxing area where they can, just spend some time, just reflecting on whatever they need to, or if they need to talk, there's, someone in the health center that's available to speak with them. And it's a good way for us to sort of parcel out, symptoms versus, physical ailments. I have a headache or I have a stomach ache. Is that, something physical, or is that coming from, a place of worry?
Great, thank you. I think I neglected to mention at the beginning to our guests that we are going to go through the questions that were submitted to us prior to the webinar. If you have any further questions, please feel free to use the chat function in Zoom. I think everybody knows how to do that now, and we'll keep an eye on those as we go forward with the webinar. But for right now, we're going to recognize that, yes, we are a boys' school. We hear all of us talking about our boys and the boys and the boys. So how, I'll ask, do we help the boys cope with challenges as young men in this society?
I think that's a great question. Katie began the comments talking about the challenges facing boys. And perhaps some of you have read or have seen that that now young women represent 60% of college and university freshman classes, and 40% nationally are boys. And then the graduation rates are lower than that for college. So there's a lot of disparity, and there's a lot of evidence to sort of say, okay, sometimes boys are not coping well with challenges. And I'll go back to sort of the countercultural reference that I made. I think that what sets us apart, other than being a boys' school, is that we are also a boarding school. And the day students who attend are attending a boarding school. And that has a large impact. There's a lot of research that suggests that that this gap between boys and girls and men and women, which has been going on for over 40 years, has parallel tracks. One of the parallel tracks of the past 40 years is how we've educated young people. And it's become much more focused on rote and memorization skills and test taking skills and so forth. And not everybody learns well that way. And boys, we know, need more active learning as part of how they learn best. Another one of these parallel tracks is a real change in how autonomy is introduced and emphasized for teenagers, and that's really interesting research to say that 40 years ago there was much more of a focus on autonomy. Now, I was talking about this to the students just last week, that they will say that we have a lot of rules, and we do. The rules are there to keep people safe and so forth. But within those guardrails, there's lots of room for autonomy and to try different things and to do things on your own. The whole focus on effort at Trinity-Pawling, the effort challenge, which we've been doing it's part of the school's DNA since its founding, but for the last over 50 years, we've had this effort challenge in place. That is an exercise in autonomy. And the boys sort of saying, okay, this is something that I can control. I get to control how hard I work at something. This is something that I own. And they learn that they can, the more that they work, the easier things get. And that also includes coping mechanisms of working toward goals and so forth. A community that is open to vulnerability, open to communication, also allows coping mechanisms to be strengthened. And so all of this is part of the mix. And then also through the experience at Trinity-Pawling, because we are a boarding school, there is plenty of opportunity to build up what I would call resiliency assets, sort of the characteristics that will help young people become more resilient, which is what we're talking about when we're talking about coping. It's about resilience, and resilience assets are built through community. They're built through self-awareness. They're built through autonomy, and they're built through trust. And all of that is part of this culture that we're building. And then there's all sorts of advocacy support where students can reach out, or faculty will reach out on behalf of a student, and students will reach out on behalf of their classmates for whom they may have concerns. So Katie and Marilyn, maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because you're really in the mix with that.
Well, I would just say, which is a bit of an echoing, that there are many eyes here on our boys. And whether it's the forum advisors, the teachers, the coaches, the health and wellness staff, dorm faculty, and peers. And those many eyes are really important, because there are disappointments here on a daily basis. We're very fortunate to have a smaller school, which means most kids are known. Obviously, right now we're getting to know our new students, but it's a real manageable group number. We see disappointments in academics. We see disappointments in relationships, on sports teams, and the college process. That was one of the questions as well. And all of the resiliency assets that Bill talked about are really empowering for these boys. For many kids coming to Trinity-Pawling, I've discovered it's the first time that students are in an academic setting where there really is the availability of adults to them, like whenever they want, and sometimes when they don't want that availability. But it is a rare and wonderful thing. And some kids have a real learning curve in terms of taking advantage of that as they build up their own advocacy assets. But if we're looking at the college process, for example, the disappointments there are super real, and the stress of the process is super real. And we have two remarkable college advisors in Mr. Dunham and Mr. Mead, and they are very attuned to the pressures of this process, and they do everything they possibly can to minimize those, but they're not going to eradicate them, and that's just impossible. So again, it's a collective effort through that college process with advisors and teachers and me working along with the college office. I think it's having that level of open communication with the boys whenever they're experiencing disappointments. Didn't make the team, right? My girlfriend broke up with me. My boyfriend broke up with me. My parents are getting a divorce. Whatever it is, we are here to help them the best we can navigate through those disappointments, and a lot of that is helping to build them up in terms of their resiliency and autonomy.
And I think that resiliency continues as they learn who they are, which is such a big part of what is happening over the time that they're here. They're beginning to sort of figure out the contrast between who they appear to be and who they really think they are, and and figuring out what they're really good at, which might be something that they didn't know before, that they didn't expect and just having that open communication and to recognize when they're sort of going through those changes and help them.
Perhaps we could shift gears a little bit and talk about the interplay between physical and mental health, because I know, that's a big part of this. It's all part of health and wellness, right?
So very, very connected. And it's really, things that aren't really complicated, but somehow seem to be the hardest things. Just having them focus on getting a good night's sleep makes such a difference in not only their academics, but in their overall mood and how they respond to stressors and to disappointments. So encouraging them to get to sleep and to get that 8 hours of sleep is really important. Encouraging them to eat healthy and to get up and have breakfast in the morning. Encouraging them to keep themselves well hydrated throughout the day and to, think about what they're drinking. Not just that they're drinking. So yeah, and all of those things, when those are not aligned, when they're not sleeping, when they're not hydrated, when they're not eating, you can start to see other things come out, and then it becomes difficult to sort of figure out what's going on, or is this something physical, or this is like a response because I'm overtired and I haven't had anything to eat yet today, and so on.
Absolutely. And I would just throw exercise in there as well. And, there was a question in here. It was so wonderful. It was about the value of time and the value of downtime. And, Bill was when you were speaking, Bill, about autonomy, right? The boys do have the choice during their day to find some downtime, right? And they do, have a choice to how they want to spend that downtime. But like most kids, they need to be sort of educated about that downtime is a resource for you. You can be restored in that downtime depending on what you're doing. So I would say through our residential life program and through our athletics and our health and wellness programs, we try and educate the boys about certainly the value of time, and time is precious, and it's super precious in any school, but it's really precious when you're at a boarding school and there's no being able to go home at night and decompress in your own cozy room. So it's important that we help the boys discover about how downtime and how they spend it is a contributor to their mental health. One of the other things that we've been talking about here quite a bit is unstructured play. And that is absolutely something that the boys can do in their downtime, and whether that's taking a walk, whether that's getting a group of guys to play Frisbee, or it's us as faculty coming together and creating an opportunity for unstructured play for the boys. And, all of us on this call grew up in a time where we had a lot of unstructured play, and we took advantage of it with riding our bikes or climbing trees or going to the, getting a, I don't know, an ice cream somewhere or what have you. We also did things that were risky. And that's part of the growth too. And so we are trying to factor in or fold in unstructured play here at Trinity-Pawling, and we'll continue to do so, because that brings the physical and the mental health together as well.
We have a lot of boys who enjoy athletics. We have boys who enjoy working out in the weight room. We have a lot of boys who are interested in protein and nutritional supplements. So, Dr. Lashlee, perhaps you could talk a little bit about how we work to educate the boys about this.
Sure. So first of all, we try to be very transparent about what protein supplements or pre-workout they may be using this year, we made it a point to try and have a conversation with each parent when they were brought to school so that we're all sort of on the same page in terms of what they may be using, and that, you know, you're on board and that we know, so that we can parcel out any, you know, potential side effects, you know, what they may be related to. Having said that, a pre-workout is certainly being targeted and to our boys, and so I think it's important to know about the products. They're targeted at improving athletic performance and building muscle, but we know that we can also do that with the right nutrition. So I think it's important to continue to have conversations about how good nutrition can sort of fill in those gaps, and that they don't necessarily need to use these protein supplements. Most children in the United States are not protein deficient, but we also know that they're going to do these things. So I think there's no scientific evidence at this point that really demonstrates against or gives you any information on the safety of. But what we do know is that not every company that makes these products fully discloses the ingredients on the labels. And so when you're choosing these types of supplements with your boys, I would say you want to be looking for things that are pure. If they have any kind of some kind of high quality product, but if they have anything on there that talks about like a proprietary blend, that means that they can kind of throw in small amounts of ingredients that we don't know about. And those could be things that really increase the level of caffeine and stimulants in them, and you may not even be aware. So, we do try to have open conversation about these supplements.
Okay, great, thank
You
you.
mentioned caffeine, Dr. Lashlee, and I know that's one of those roads that we're working to help young people navigate. I think some people have noticed that there will be coffee available in our learning commons during part of the day, not in the late afternoon or not in the evening, but students do consume caffeine. Now, we have been very deliberate about taking out high caffeine concentrated drinks from vending machines and so forth. But they do have access to coffee, but that's something that we talk to them about. And perhaps, Dr. Lashlee, you could talk a little bit about how we work to educate around a very common use of caffeine.
Yeah, it's very common, and it would, I think, be unrealistic of us to expect that we could eliminate it entirely, unfortunately. But that they're going to go after it. And while we'd like to keep their caffeine levels down, coffee will be probably the least potent way for them to get this caffeine. We try really hard to educate them about the dangers of some of these energy drinks. Not only do some of them have caffeine of 300, 400, 500 milligrams, they also have a lot of sugar in them. And then again, a lot of them have sort of hidden ingredients that we don't know about. So we do a lot of talking and educating. We try to sort of intervene if we see them, walking around with these sorts of things. We try to limit the access as much as possible. It also impacts their, sleeping. If they're using these things, it makes them feel, more anxious. It can cause, heart palpitations and high blood pressure, and just all sorts of things. And the bottom line is that if they use these to get more energy and then they don't sleep, it just creates really a vicious cycle.
And again, I think we will work to make sure that we're noticing sleep patterns. I mean, you can tell pretty quickly if a boy has not gotten enough sleep, and that leads to discussion, and that leads to discovery sometimes. Oh well, yeah, I've been using, I have these quick shot energy drinks that they can get at CVS. Well, no, that's not very good for you.
Right.
And so forth. Or maybe they're up playing video games and technology. And we haven't really talked about technology and mental health, but that's an interplay too.
The elephant in the room.
Yeah, right. So why don't we turn to that? And because there's a lot of different variations of technology and the threats to mental health, the threats to physical health, and yet we can't get rid of technology.
Yeah, it's here, right? It's here technology is here in our lives, and it's in the lives of our children. And Mr. Taylor has talked about this before, is that for our boys and adolescents, and even it's getting younger and younger, but in speaking about our boys, their phone is an extension of them. It is a part of them. And we want to be very, meaning, and this is not unlike a lot of us adults, right? If we're very proprietary of our telephones and our smartphones, and dependent upon them. So as we think about if the student is highly distracted by their phone, we have to be sensitive about how we take it from them, quite literally, right? Because that feels like an assault to them. You're taking a part of me. And why is that? That all ties into our brain chemistry, right? Everybody has read about that our brain chemistry, those chemicals, those neurotransmitters of dopamine mimic that of what happens when people are using substances and other types of addictions, right? And that's just a reality. And these brilliant social media people have that front and center in their minds when they're creating things. So we want to try and meet the boys kind of where they are in their social media use, in their technology use. And it's hard for us to put our phones away, right? Many of us. And we're fully developed human beings. And our boys, and this is where I try and empathize with them, is that this is, first of all they've known pretty much in their lifetime, and that they're not fully developed from a cognition perspective. Their ability to plan and think thoughtfully, and as we know, consequential thinking is not developed either. And there's a general impulsivity there that is fed by these chemical changes in their brains when they're using their social media. So one of the scariest things I think about this social media is this idea that the grass is always greener, right? And this is where they're learning to do things and understand things, both things that are good and bad, destructive, right? So it's virtually impossible for us to understand everything that they're learning through social media. So here at Trinity-Pawling, teachers have the discretion of whether they want the students to have the phones with them in class, or they want to put them in a basket on the side or what have you, so the kids don't have access to them during the classroom. There is research. Oh, and I'll maybe just say that at chapel, at Monday morning meeting, at lunches, sit-down lunches, phones are to be put away and not used, because therein lies an opportunity for kids to connect with others and kind of learn the art of conversation and to listen and what have you. So, because that's a responsibility of us as educators as well. But the research on phones being on one's desk, and that includes us as adults, but on the desks of students or even in the backpack, accessible to them, shows that presence and the availability influences working memory capacity and fluid intelligence, which leads to lower attention, right? Which makes perfect sense. And there is also the impact, as we know, stating the bloody obvious, that it has an impact on our relationship development, right? By inhibiting opportunities for interpersonal dialogue and closeness and familiarity with other people. So there really are risks, and we as an academic or educational community we've got to work against that and with it at the same time, and it's very tricky. I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to look up the American Psychological Association's study on adolescent social media use. They provide 10 interesting points that are interesting for us to read and get a sense of where the American Psychological Association is coming at in terms of their research on adolescent social media use. So, if we find that a computer or a telephone is interfering with sleep, with completing academic work, with getting to classes, getting to other extracurricular commitments, then we will work with parents, but we work with the student, and we will remove that temptation from them at the approach, such that they can get their sleep, such that they can get to their commitments, and feel better about that overall. Here, they've got lots to do in their day, right? Which is a beautiful thing. And yes, that happens at other schools, but at boarding school, we have this opportunity in this counterculture to, encourage them to really tap into this autonomy. And it doesn't have to all be about being on your phone, right? We create a schedule here that there is less opportunity for phone use, which is really important. But it is technology is something that we as educators think about a lot, and try to understand too what the student's world is in terms of social media and its pros and its cons.
I will say that we also, we turn the internet off every night at a certain hour. It's later on the weekends, but now that's not to say that they've got to, if they want to burn a lot of data, they can get access to the internet. But we do what we can to limit that. And we also, work to deal with other aspects of technology that are unhealthy, such as cyberbullying. That we're very specific about cyberbullying, and we use, we talk about cyberbullying in the same way we would talk about harassment or hate speech. And part of the overall emphasis on teaching these young people about how to use technology responsibly, and in safe and healthy ways. Now, for many kids, especially boys, sometimes they have to learn through experience that why that is not allowed. And we're certainly willing to educate in that way. But it's it's important. I mean, there's a whole different it's a psychological term now, fear of missing out, and because they have so much access to stimulation that we actually have to work to educate boys and girls that that's unhealthy. You've got to be able to shut things down, both in terms of technology, but also in terms of your own brain, and get sleep and take time for yourself and nutrition and so forth.
And
I
just
think
one.
it's-
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I wanted to mention that I think it's also important to consider that they're also using their phones to get information, off the internet. And that's okay, but we don't want that to take the place of having open dialogue between parent and child, or adult and child, because technology can give them more information than we can about most topics, but it doesn't have your values. It's not going to be sensitive to your son's situation. It's not going to take his developmental and personality into consideration. So we want to make sure that, yes, it's a place to go to get information, but it's not the only place to go to get information. You're here to help them, because when they have something happens during the day, a lot of times that's where they're going to for an answer, right? Why did this happen? How did this happen? Why do I feel this way? What's wrong with me? All of these sorts of things, they're using that technology for that purpose also.
Yeah. And I think,
oh, go ahead, Katie.
no, I think one of our roles here at Trinity-Pawling is instead of kind of fighting the technology with our boys at times, we need to help create spontaneous opportunities for the kids to get out and do things, or whether that's through dorm activities or other, as I said before, unstructured play. Because that's when we're creating another opportunity for them to pull away from their phones. Probably good for the adults too, right? So we have that kind of responsibility, I find.
Amy, I know we've shaped this dialogue in a way that was designed to answer many of the questions that had been previously submitted, but I know we probably haven't touched on all of them. So are there any questions that we have not hit yet from the list?
One question just came in about technology, so that was just addressed. And I think, folks hop into the Q&A or chat, but study skills, I think we've addressed, having study hours in the evenings and during the day, and it looks as if we've covered all the topics as far as I can see. Let us know
There was a great question I saw earlier about a boy who's sort of trying to maybe redefine himself and create a new persona, which is very, very common in adolescence. Very common in adolescence. I mean, that's what adolescence is trying on different personas and personalities to see which one feels right. And sometimes, that can be challenging with friend dynamics. If a friend, a group of friends say, well, this is who you were last year, but you seem to be different this year. And, that is also normal. And sometimes friend groups change as a result of that. But I think it's very normal for teenagers to sort of say, okay, maybe I didn't like this aspect of who I was before, and I want to try to do this. And so we want to, encourage that and support that, all the while by being very attentive to the social dynamics, to friend groups, and if they're feeling supported and so forth. But I thought that was a wonderful question.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely did too. And there were two other questions. Where should I draw the line between prying and respecting my son's privacy? And I'm curious about what you're seeing as important for parents to consider when we support our boys from afar. That is a very tricky question. Where should I draw the line between prying and respecting my son's privacy? And my initial response is, look at the trust that lies in your relationship, right? From before your son came here and, where it is right now, and just reinforcing your role as a support and one of guidance, and that can come in the form of listening and letting them know that you're that you're there for them, and also knowing that they're not going to share everything you want them to share. And that's just part of the world of adolescence and parenting adolescents. So and I think it takes some time to figure out, understanding the trust that lies between you, and then ways that within your relationship with your son, you can bring out information from him in a way that feels safe for him, and that you receive with that level of respect. And then curious about what you're seeing as important for parents to consider when we support our boys from afar. And again, I think trust comes into play here. I have two daughters who went away to boarding school, and I remember thinking often, like, are there conversations that I'm missing with my girls? Like, if they were home, would I be having other conversations with them? And I definitely wrestled with that. And what was really important to me was to know that my daughters had really important and invested relationships with other adults on campus. So I knew that conversations were happening outside of me or my husband having conversations with them. So I hope you can trust in us a little bit that way. And just as they're navigating, I know that you are too, with them being here. So, I also, maybe this goes back to the first question I mentioned, is that I remember when I was early in graduate school, and I listened to an adolescent psychologist, speaking about the importance of the presence of parents during adolescence. And that meant at that time, he was saying, if you're in the kitchen and your child is upstairs in their room, and when that child comes to the top of the stairs and says, "What's for dinner, Mom?" that is a loaded question. He wants to know you're there, and he doesn't really care what's for dinner, but that's a touch point. And I think any way that from a distance you can create touch points with your boys, so that they just know you're there as they're trying to figure out their daily world here.
And I would also add, always feel free to reach out to your son's advisor or teacher if there's a question about what's something going on in class. Because we're only going to be as effective as a school as the depth and success of our partnership with you as parents.
Mm-hmm. I'll add one quick thought there. As my oldest daughter went to boarding school, I remember thinking that the people who were around her, us in this circumstance, were going to see her so much more than I would have as a working mom, because I didn't see her. So she had a lot more. She still keeps in touch with those kids. And I would say we do the same with generations of boys as they grow up amongst us and then move on. We're still in their lives, which is very, very affirming. We have any other concluding thoughts that you'd like to add? Or I will wrap us up at this hour, approaching an hour. It's always fun to see the hour go by so quickly. I wanted to remind you of our series. Next Pride Perspective is going to be on October 16th. And that's going to be a student and alumni showcase of our Center for Learning Achievement. So we look forward to that. I see one question popped up. Let me see what that is. On October 16th, at 7 o'clock, the same time. Oh, thank you. It's an applaud and respect what you're all navigating and managing with respect to technology, nutrition, and helping the boys be their best selves. Very happy your son is here. So thank you very much for that. We appreciate your thoughts. And as Bill said, we are here for them 24/7. So if there are any questions or concerns, reach out to advisors, teachers, any one of us, and we're happy to be partnering in this very important endeavor. Thank you all. This is recorded, so it will be available if you'd like to watch it or share it. And we look forward to talking to you in about a month again. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.